We need to talk about AI for a bit. Yeah, it's an AI talk. I'm so sorry. It's the only thing anybody can talk about right now. Every single person, technical enough and millennial enough to still have a blog, has definitely written a blog post about how their personal relationship with AI coding has changed. It's insufferable. I really don't like it when people talk about AI. It makes me feel bad. So let's talk about that. Why does AI coding make me feel bad? This is kind of a hypocritical stance. Usually whenever a new tool launches, I'm not the first to try it, but I'm usually there fussing with it before too long. I've used a lot of AI tools in a lot of stages of their development over the past decade, but something about the feeling of people talking about AI coding everywhere makes me feel bad. I feel like this might be worth exploring in a presentation because these feelings might not be unique to just me. I can explore how I process and tackle negative emotions like this. In 2009, a book called Drive argued for a three-part taxonomy of things that make people feel happy and motivated in their work. It's one of those airport business books, so you don't have to take it too seriously, but it resonated with me enough to stick. Here are the three parts: mastery, autonomy, and purpose. I'll summarize it quickly for you. Mastery is the feeling that you're good at your job. Your responsibilities line up with your capabilities. I like working at VR Chat because I'm relatively competent and mostly able to do my job. Autonomy is feeling like you're trusted to complete jobs your own way. I like working at VR Chat because they trust me to solve problems and let me work from home. Finally, purpose is the desire to do something that's meaningful. I like working at VR Chat because the product that we make there demonstrably improves the world somewhat. Mostly for, well, VR Chat users, but it's good to have some kind of impact. AI isn't great for any of these things. The loss of mastery is simple. Now anybody with $100 to spend on compute credits has access to a polite, friendly junior developer at all times, meaning that the fully 3 to 4 years of skill development that it takes to get to even that level feels like a total waste of time. It's cool that they democratized a skill set. I'm mad that they democratized my skill set. My skill, at least at the level of basic software development expertise, is now common as dirt, rendered utterly meaningless by its ubiquity. Anybody at our company can make a small tool to solve a problem that they have right away, and that used to be something that only I could do, and something I fought hard to be able to do. I also understand less of my job than before. If you haven't tried asking Claude to do something for you, let me tell you, Claude take the wheel moments divorce you from a feeling of understanding your codebase, robbing you of your own agency over what's happening. By handing tasks over to someone else, even if that person is imaginary, you're no longer the effective operator of your codebase. You become a bystander. Beyond that, while the world of LLMs aren't too hard to understand, they're still full of people holding court, confident that their Claude skills, or their specific token generation strategy, is giving them some kind of competitive edge. It feels like there's a fast-moving new trend there, and anytime someone knows more about it than I do, I feel a little more behind. Also, while the models themselves are pretty easy to work with, the machine learning research that informs the construction and training of those models is so far beyond my mid-level CS understanding of learning algorithms that they might as well be a completely different field. LLM coding also constitutes a pretty solid blow to autonomy. This is already something that drifts away as a company gets larger, decision-making gets more and more diffuse, and now 3 people are having a meeting about what happens when you click on the back button. But it's worse now. I'm not making decisions about my codebase anymore. I'm reviewing PRs. Lots of PRs. Even when I'm the only one who's coding, I'm still reviewing, but now it's the work of an excitable imaginary junior developer. AI, finally, also constitutes a pretty solid attack on my sense of purpose. The social context of all the stuff we're doing is poisoned by this feeling of rampant accelerationism. AI and tech in general is carrying us into a bad new future. When I'm spending money on Opus credits, that money feeds into a system that's paving over communities with data centers to improve our ability to drone strike children. I'm not sure how much I want to empower the kind of people who pay for LinkedIn Premium. They spend their time in a hell of their own devising. So, AI coding makes me feel bad because it attacks the 3 pillars of enjoyment that I depend upon to like what I do. This all seems pretty bad, but I'm not throwing a presentation just to gripe at you all. Some of this is really unfounded cynicism on my part. There's a term coined by ContraPoints' Natalie Wynn, masochistic epistemology, which is the idea that things that hurt feel more true. When someone tells you you're good looking, it's easy to brush off because there are loads of reasons to lie about that. But when someone tells you you're an ugly lump, it feels more truthful because there's nothing to be gained from lying about that. Cynicism by default feels more likely to be true, but it's a flawed way of understanding what's happening. Cynicism masquerades as wisdom, but it's the furthest thing from it, because cynics don't learn anything. Because cynicism is a self-imposed blindness, a rejection of the world because we're afraid it will hurt us or disappoint us. If you want people to trust you, you have to be able to clearly, cynically identify problems so that people believe that you know what you're talking about, but then open your heart and make yourself vulnerable anyways. See the problems, then set about trying to fix them. I'm still optimistic about this social web, even though Google and Facebook kinda killed the vibe. I'm still optimistic about distributed systems, even though cryptocurrency made it feel really gross. I'm still optimistic about VR, even after Meta. Even though there are 6 people left in the world with VR headsets still plugged in, and I work with all of them. So, I'm going to try to thread the needle. How can I feel optimistic about AI? So we finally get to the point, the thesis statement of this section of the presentation. AI is making some of us kind of sad and stressed, and I have some ideas about how to improve this. How to preserve mastery, autonomy, and purpose now that AI can code. Let's talk about mastery first. Senior engineering is not actually mostly about coding, it's about context. It's about maintaining an accurate mental model of a complex system over time. Creating and maintaining software involves loading a huge amount of context into your head. Learning a system is like learning the rules to the most needlessly complicated and infuriating board game you've ever encountered. I'm not sure if we've all had a moment like this, but I think it's instructive. Sometimes you don't really understand a rule or a mechanic in a game. Like, you can understand that in chess you can swap a king and a rook, but you don't really intuitively understand why you would want to do that. Software systems, too, often have that kind of gap between understanding what a few parts of the system do in isolation, but really effectively operating and changing the system requires a kind of strategic intuition about how it all fits together. Vibe coding has a more specific meaning than simply letting an LLM code on your behalf. It's much worse than that. It's abandoning context. It's giving up, letting Claude take the wheel, and just loosely asking for software until something appears. A system that nobody understands is inherently kind of a problem. It can't be reasoned about. Nobody passively has that system sitting in their head occupying space over time. Anytime you let an LLM write or deeply rewrite a system or solve a problem with that system on your behalf without you taking the time to really understand what's happening, you've given up on understanding that system, that component, that chunk of code. It's gone. It's become a black box to you. Future interactions with that system will now be more difficult and arcane from this point forward. You are no longer the person who can effectively modify it. The LLM at this point has already forgotten the way that it works. If you ask it about the code it just wrote, it will look at it with fresh eyes. Every time you invoke an LLM, you're effectively hiring a completely different company full of contractors to come, take a look at the problem, write a report about it, and then disappear forever. Claude picks up context so quickly that it might seem unimportant to being able to deliver code, but that's an illusion. An LLM currently cannot pick up enough context to reliably make good senior-level architectural decisions about the codebase. And if you don't watch its output carefully, it will reliably make bad decisions that can compound into worse decisions if you don't catch them before they become architectural patterns. Building and maintaining a sense of understanding of a system is vital to being able to reason about it in the long run, which remains the only way to be an effective senior developer. But just because we need context to do a good job doesn't mean we always have it. We also lose context lots of other ways. The developers who originally built the thing can leave, or be fired, or get hit by a bus. Nobody completely understands the product I work on. Nobody completely understands its back end. Curiously, I can also attest to a different effect. Me from 5 years ago is a completely different person. I don't remember everything I did, or why. I've never been at a job before the one that I'm currently working at where I've stayed around long enough to forget entire systems, but I'm getting older and I'm starting to realize that one of the reasons I build systems the way that I do is that I also lose context quickly. Every system becomes a black box over time, even the ones you've built yourself, faster than you think. Your understanding of the system is a rapidly vanishing currency. That's why stuff I write is modular, consistent with other things I've written, plastered with explanatory text, peppered with integration tests. It's all built to guard against me forgetting how it works, which I will. And then, equipped with the confidence that I can in fact forget how it works and it'll be okay, I'm free to. I'm free to move on to something else. I'm no longer shackled to the prison of context I've built for myself. Some people get to be a lead developer by building a large and impressive system all by themselves. All of the context, one person. And then they're trapped by it, bound to it. They're the ghost in the machine. If you ever get the feeling that VRChat itself is unpredictable and unreliable but kind of likes you, that's my spirit bouncing around in there. Say hi for me. At this point, that single developer has become a liability, a bottleneck, a barrier to understanding. It's useful to have them around, but having all of the context in one person is a mistake. They need to consult on all features that touch their system. They need to approve everything. They overwork themselves, they stress themselves out, they martyr themselves for the product, and to what end? There are more people who work here who could help. By intentionally knowing less, by abandoning some context, this person can diffuse responsibility and share context with others. The most powerful words in a lead developer's lexicon are, "I don't remember how that works." Their incompetence builds a more resilient organization. One of my most important accomplishments is building a backend team that doesn't need me at all. I could vanish tomorrow and the company would be completely fine. It's counterintuitive, but hoarding too much context can be as damaging to your product as having not enough. So, is AI-assisted coding okay if you maintain a full and complete understanding of what it's doing at all times? Well, yeah. But with the caveat that if you are doing that, it takes longer than just coding it by hand. You gain nothing. And I think holding yourself to that standard might be too stringent. If what you want are productivity increases, and that's what we all want, really, you're going to have to pick some stuff that's just not worth understanding. Ultimately, software development is about abstracting certain details away, be it through a compiler, or someone else's library, or generated code. Think of your context as an understanding budget. You want to spend it wisely. Figuring out what's worth understanding requires nuance. Some things don't need you to remember having done them. Boilerplate, weird little language bugs, lots of weird little bugs to be honest. At some point, you've just done a thing so many times that it won't meaningfully affect your growth to do that thing a millionth time. And that's a thing that can absolutely go. So I'm going to talk about some strategies. Ways to LLM code without losing context, and ways to LLM code where it doesn't matter that you've lost context. First of all, consider positioning the machine as an adversary. It's a thing I like to do. I'll describe the way a system should work, I'll sketch out the interface, and then I'll ask the LLM to write all of the tests for me. Our tests are boilerplate. They're things I've written 1,000 times, so there's not much to be gained by writing new ones again and again and again and again. The tests themselves need to be reviewed to verify that they test what I want them to test, but once the tests exist, it's still on me to write the code that makes them pass. And I walk away from this interaction having saved time, with more tests, and still maintaining a complete understanding of the system at hand. Rather than using LLMs to abdicate your own context, let them expand your context window. They can usually summarize complicated systems pretty well, so point them at stuff you don't understand and ask them questions until you do understand. Pepper the LLM with questions. It can be wrong about stuff, so interrogate things that sound suspicious. Just go look at things yourself, and see if your new context window provides enough information to solve problems on your own. Ask it to explain why your idea didn't work. The goal is not to overcome the work, it's to improve yourself until the work becomes trivial. There are lots of opportunities to take a break from LLM tools and depend on your own melon for a feature or two in order to keep mush from replacing the part of your brain that does the thinking. Right now, I'm having a no tools week. No Claude, no Copilot, I'm just raw problem solving with my regular brain. These tools are going to give you a lot of opportunities to forget how to code entirely, so make sure to build some real code on your own once in a while. Now, ways to lose context without it being as much of a problem are more about abstraction. If you're conserving your context window, here's what to keep. Here's what's worth understanding. Function signatures, tests, integration tests. If a component of your system is going to be a black box, like any black box, you're only really required to understand the inputs and the outputs. How it gets there can be academic. Trust, but verify. A lot of context is going to fly by as you watch the LLM think through the work that you've asked it to do. And you can watch it cut corners and make mistakes in real time, then confidently report to you complete lies. That LLM confidence is going to get it and you in trouble. Don't trust its lies. Build tools to verify everything that it does. And this is just good practice in general. Do you know who else I don't trust to write code? Me. My code is generally steaming horse garbage. It can't be trusted to run under any circumstances. It's at this point a pretty ironclad axiom in my head: code that isn't tested simply does not work. If you can't think of a way to test it, it does not work. It's broken in production right now. If the tests claim that the thing works, there's not enough tests, because those tests are code, and code does not work. You've never actually really been able to trust code. With LLMs in the mix, it's just much more true than it ever was before. Constant rolling verification that things actually work the way that you think they do has gone from being a nice to have to a bedrock necessity. We're also now at risk of accelerating the problem of producing more quantity than we can keep up with in quality. So when you're looking at things that you can build with LLMs, instead of crowding the plate with new features, how about secondary tools and features that allow you to build more quality into your application? Consider more support features, tests, linters, dashboards. Chase some of the big refactors you've been meaning to take on. Next, I want to talk about preserving autonomy. If mastery can be represented by your understanding of the systems at play, we can model autonomy as your sense of authorship and direction over the systems you're building. It's really important to feel like you have some ability to affect the decisions happening around you. The less of that you're doing, the less happy you'll be. As software developers, we often feel divorced from the decision-making process because, well, we're not the ones making the decisions. We're simply the cogs responsible for turning requirements into working products. Where do those requirements even come from? Nobody knows. Well, production, design, leadership, and engineering management all fighting over what's possible, what's a good idea, and how our product should look and work. I often participate only lightly in this process. I'm not a power user of our product or even a casual user of our product, so I'm not terribly opinionated about it, and most of these decisions are cosmetic and have little impact on the back end where I work in particular. I just don't care about portals. Did we ship a feature that had to do with portals? I don't know. A lot of these meetings for me are just me trying to keep from losing focus until someone finally mentions a part of the product I have any kind of control over. On top of being not terribly opinionated, I'm also pretty confident. I've been working on the back end for a decade at this point, and so the answer to just about any question along the lines of, can you do this, is almost always, yeah, that'll take 2 weeks. Or if it's ambitious, yeah, that'll take 2 months. The people who I perceive as making the decisions are doing it with data, A/B testing, NPS surveys, all that stuff that lets companies sort of diffuse the responsibility for decision making away from themselves and towards data. It's their job to decide how to try and make line go up. It's not my job. That is kind of a needlessly cynical take on things, though. The people who I perceive as making the decisions work with me. I can talk to them whenever I want. The places where these decisions live and the discussions that shape them are happening around me all the time. And the currency of those decisions are documents, presentations, and meetings. If you want your voice heard, you're going to have to engage in that system, which means writing documents, giving presentations, and attending meetings. Awful, I know. Gross. Write more. I believe that one of the most classic and reliable ways to influence product direction is to write convincingly and clearly. Well-written documents and arguments carry a lot of weight. Presentations are also written. I wrote this. And also, just in general, write more. Writing is one of the ways we can take thoughts out of our head and look at them and roll them around. Part of being deliberate is being able to structure your ideas. If you code by writing ideas at a machine, then you're going to be able to code better by being able to write clearly and unambiguously. If AI tools are legitimately able to deliver on their promised efficiency improvements, they're going to give you some time back. We can hope. And that's an autonomy win right there. You can decide what to do with some of the time you get back. If there's an itch you need to scratch, if there's a feature that needs to exist or a fix that needs to be made, consider just doing it. Just doing it yourself. You know how they say it's better to ask forgiveness than permission? Both of those are a mistake. Don't ask for forgiveness or ask for permission. Broadcast up front what you plan to do, loud enough that anybody who thinks it's a bad idea can tell you to stop. That's not asking for permission, that's broadcasting intention. And then do the thing you said you would do. If someone complains afterwards, there was ample opportunity to stop you. Do you know what's really convincing? Proofs of concept. That's right there in the name. Not only do you have a concept, you proved it. The ability of LLMs to go really, really fast is, well, magnified on greenfield prototypes because you don't have 10 years of legacy cruft to work through. Honestly, when most people are convinced of the magic of LLM coding, it's not working on gigantic code bases that have been around forever. It's working on little muffin projects that are fun to build, and they're great at that. So you could take advantage of this to prototype ambitious stuff that you wouldn't normally tackle. In particular, I recommend this if you're feeling down. It's good for your soul to have something that's yours. This is the antidote to all kinds of malaise. Just go do something you care about. As for actually using tools like Claude, there's not much to figure out. We're talking about an interface that you work with by talking at it. Everybody over the age of 5 is equipped with the machinery it takes to understand how to LLM code at an expert level. It is the least complicated computer program to use that has literally ever been invented. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I wasn't sure if I even wanted to give this talk. It feels self-evident. There are precious few hot tips that can be passed around here. There's not a lot of operator skill you can develop. It's just typing into a chat window. If you're proud of your ability to use Claude, maybe you should be a little ashamed of that. That is a non-skill. It's you and everybody else with a pulse and a keyboard. There's another thing to consider. Not just how working with an LLM affects you, about how you working with an LLM affects me, interacting with you. Part of your job is an implicit social contract with your coworkers. Everything I show you is something I personally have put time and thought into. It's really important not to break that contract. It's something of a betrayal to share something thoughtless with someone else, especially if you pass it off as your own work. People will stop taking you seriously. If your reputation is no better than LLM entry/exit point, well, we all have access to the same LLM that you do, so why should we bother talking to you rather than it? Folks are going to call you on your slop if you slop at them too aggressively, and if you see something that looks like slop, maybe we need to be okay with calling that out. This one's kind of weird, but I've heard a lot of people say, like, don't anthropomorphize the machine, like the LLM is somehow fooling you into treating it like a human. I think that you should go right ahead and anthropomorphize the machine a little bit. Because being rude and imperious with an imaginary machine is going to develop a habit that you take to your coworkers and your personal life. You're going to start to feel frustrated when real people don't get back to you immediately and obsequiously, and that could do real, actual lasting damage to your brain and relationships. So, take a little bit of extra time to model the LLM as a colleague. Treat it like a thing that you would treat like a human, not because you believe it's a real person, but because every interaction you have builds habits that you take to every other interaction you have. We're also probably going to have to forgive some weird interpersonal interactions for a little bit. There's no LLM etiquette yet. It's too new a field. The world's best politeness scientists are totally stumped. Your fellow employees are going to cross lines that you drew in your head. Just try to understand we're all learning as we go here. We also have to do more PR reviews now. The low quality bar and high output of LLMs means more worse PRs, and PR reviews aren't fun. In fact, the PR situation is enough of a topic that I think it needs its own slide. PR review is really hard. I'm pretty sure that being able to productively do a good PR review is harder than coding. It requires the same context that it took to solve the problem in the first place, but instead of looking at the problem, what you're looking at is someone else's solution to the problem. From that solution, you're expected to work backwards, understand the problem deeply, and productively add to the conversation, in a fraction of the time they spent developing the PR in the first place. It's also the kind of silent, behind-the-scenes enablement work that advances someone else's goals at the cost of your own. It's not terribly visible or well-rewarded. Game theory dictates that nobody at a company with a rank-and-yank-based pay scale should ever review someone else's PR without a gun to their head or some kind of quid pro quo arrangement where everyone benefits equally. Of course, since reviews unblock other engineers, they're actually the most important work you can do. I also believe that if you spent a lot of time building a high-trust environment with your coworkers, the PR process can be quick, smooth, looks good to me. Part of that is a high-trust environment unties that game theory knot. If you trust that other engineers will prioritize your PRs over their work, you'll feel more comfortable prioritizing theirs, without feeling like you need to keep score. Also, if you trust your work, you'll look for any of the obvious things you always look for. Zip, zap, zoop, it unblocks people and gets them on their way faster. If something looks obviously dangerous, or if it's from a more junior employee, you give it more scrutiny, you dig in deeper. But generally, you can trust that people who have had good judgment in the past will continue to have good judgment in the future. We were just talking about how tests protect you from taking on too much context. If the code comes with sufficient validation that it works, you don't need to think as hard about the fine details that establish how it works. PR feedback from me is often, this needs more tests. If your code includes code that verifies that your code does what you say your code does, there's not nearly as much space for me to leave feedback. There's a quality versus velocity scale at play here too. Reviews are a place where we slow things down in order to maintain software quality. The more weight that quality has on the scale, the more that velocity has to slow down in response. A high velocity environment gets PRs approved and in production quickly. But now, a very charismatic digital con man with no skin in the game, no skin at all, hopefully, may have convinced your trusted coworker that this code is fine, it'll definitely work, and they can just push it for review without thinking about it too hard. That high-trust environment that enables fast PR review is slipping, so in order to counterbalance it, we have to look at every pull request a little bit more closely. Since reviews are, in my opinion, more often the bottleneck than the coding itself, this means that a lot of people pushing PRs very quickly might actually, ultimately, slow the team down more than a lot of high-speed PRs speed things up. It's a distributed denial of service attack on PR review capability. It's also why every time I'm blocked waiting for a review, I just review everyone else's code until someone unblocks me again. Since we have to do more PR reviews now, I have some limited ideas on how to make PR reviews a little faster. Most of these will already be familiar with you, but I feel like I should cover them anyways because they're important to the topic at hand. One of them is small, tightly bound PRs. I know a lot of time when I'm working on one thing, I'll see 8 other things I want to fix, and I don't, because those are for separate PRs. Keeping PRs manageable in size is hard, but the smaller they are, the faster they are to review. I'd rather have 3 separate, small, tightly bound, easy-to-understand reviews that each do one thing, rather than a huge omnibus PR that mixes up all 3 of those things, because the huge PR will take way more than 3 times as long to get someone to look at and understand. Another thing that makes PR faster to review is to limit the context that the person reviewing the PR needs. Smaller products are just easier to work with. Now, it's important to note that I'm not advocating necessarily for microservices here. If you work on a video game, the game will always be one thing, no matter how you ship it. But having a team with well-defined ownership over a specific module or component means that for the review process, there should be a very clear set of people who you can harass to review that specific piece of code. People who already understand the problem space really well. Remember that game theory quid pro quo thing from earlier? It does work. If you have a person who you trust, you can review each other's code. Having a PR buddy to back and forth those code reviews, you stay up to date on their context, they stay up to date on yours. It means faster PR reviews. You unblock them, they unblock you. It's actually a pretty good strategy. My only quibble with this is that sometimes it allows you and that other person to develop a context silo and weird patterns that the whole rest of your team start to become unfamiliar with. And finally, seminar reviews. This is something we've experimented with a bit. It's tough to do well. If you have a complex PR, you can have the whole team do a call about it and just run it line by line. I can struggle with these, particularly because it's a lot to take in all at once. Like, they force me and the whole team to load the whole context of a specific PR at a scheduled time that might sit right in the middle of their own intricate workday. If it's a complex feature, this will overload my entire mental RAM and I won't be able to think about anything else all day. But if quality problems are starting to bottleneck the whole department, it might be time to start having mob PR days. It's Monday morning before everyone's booted up. Everyone get in the car. We're going to review everything in the queue together. The biggest reason I've never wanted to do this is that I'm usually the last person awake on Monday mornings. By the time I'm awake, you're probably halfway through your day and already buzzing on some important task. There are other reasons too. Massive synchronous work like this has a lot of downsides and it's very expensive. I just want to mention that it's something that we've thought of and tried sometimes, and it might be a cool idea, especially if you're having problems with PRs. This is the last of the 3 segments to talk about, and also kind of the most philosophical, the most personal, the least engineering focused, and so the least appropriate for me to go on at length about. So I'll try to keep this brief. Here are some things that give me hope for the future. So local LLMs. I've been burning like $5 to $100 a day fiddling with Claude, which is not that much compared to my salary, but I also wouldn't spend that in real life in exchange for what I'm getting from Claude. If I do that every workday, I could end up burning in the realm of like $10,000 to $20,000 per year. Cheaper than getting me an assistant, but I don't think anybody was offering to get me an assistant. I've had our IT take me off of Miro multiple times because $21 a month is a bridge too far for software expenses. Claude, on the other hand, is very expensive. I would honestly rather have an extra $20,000. I'm also intimately aware that that price is currently subsidized aggressively by all of global finance trying to make AI feel inevitable. While economies of scale are mounting to make it less expensive, that subsidization is going to tail off as our AI companies burn through their absolutely massive amount of seed capital. One of the things I've been experimenting with is just how much of this stack I can get working with a local model, what I can do with freely available tools and my consumer-grade GPU. Heavily quantized Qwen and Gemma and DeepSeek aren't currently quite as impressive as Anthropic and OpenAI's most up-to-date models, but they're catching up very quickly, and people can just run this stuff on their own. There are subreddits, although admittedly those subreddits are full of people who are cheerfully buying $13,000 workstation-class GPUs for like dumb little home automation projects. You could consider just going to a nice restaurant for a dinner date with your wife 130 consecutive nights in a row and see whether that makes you happier than slightly faster token generation at home on personal projects. It drains hope out of my system to feel like AI isn't going to be evenly distributed, that good coders are just going to be the people who have the most money to throw at Anthropic for access to their deluxe models. But the growing community hacking around this helps me feel a little better. It does make me feel a little defensive about my old RTX 2070, though. For now, at least, Claude Code needs someone technical to drive it. It's a junior engineer, not a senior one. Someone needs to understand what's going on, someone needs to do a bit of architecture, someone needs to review the code, someone needs to remember how things work, someone needs to care how things work. Someone needs to be able to figure out what's going on and convert it into big, weird presentations for even less technical users. We all still have a little bit of time left on the clock. I remember when having a handmade sweater with hand-sewn patches in it was a sign you were poor. Gross. Now having a handmade sweater with hand-sewn patches in it is a sign you're rich as hell. Who can afford to have a sweater made by a real human, not a factory, out of actual yarn? And then because it's made out of materials that don't dissolve when you sneeze on them, they're not coated in silicone gel to make them feel soft and smooth when you buy them to conceal how cheap the fabric is, you can actually repair the clothing if it breaks. That's pricey. Yarn costs more than clothes now. Go on Etsy and find out how much it costs to get a high-end hand-knit sweater. It's from the high hundreds to low thousands of dollars. Good enough can put a lot of folks out of business, but putting effort and thought and care into something is still a flex. And it's becoming more of a flex as effort, thought, and care are vanishing. The competition is getting faster, but also more uniform, more bland, more willing to accept a generative boilerplate rather than getting weird. Being weird. Unique is becoming more and more of a differentiator. Lots of folks out there are willing to claim that if you're not currently at the center of a cluster of autonomous agents, all of them speaking to one another in a complex dance on your behalf, you're not truly living the AI native lifestyle. These people are almost universally selling something, and I bet you the thing they're selling is not well-written software. I don't really think that LLM tools are all the way there yet. I think that humans still have a lot of gas in the tank when it comes to large system design. Getting AI from junior to senior is going to be as hard, if not harder, than it was to get it to junior in the first place, I think. Which is good for me, at least for now. But while I prefer that LLM coding tools not vanish my entire career, you have to admit, it's a hell of a way to go. Divorced from the context of my continuous need to eat food, it's pretty neat. Like, a computer interface where just everyone can talk to it to have it do whatever they want is the best possible computer interface. It does kind of obviate the need for people to design UIs. There are lots of ways that software jobs could collapse. This is at the very least one of the cooler ways it could go. At the end of the day, everything will still change. Nothing about the world the way it is today is like it was when I was 10. I learned to code on a CRT monitor out of physical books. There was no Git. The world was obsessed with multimedia compact discs, and internet access cost money per hour you spent on the internet. Everything looked like, this. Technology will change. People will change. The job will change. Your abilities will change. The only constant is that wherever you go, if you're thoughtful, kind, and warm, you can build a community out of the people you find there. So cheer up, Buttercup. It's gonna get weird, but at least you don't have to face it alone.